YouTube. This is Rap from Rap's Garage Shop, and this is a Revtech 5-speed transmission in a 4-speed case. You can see it has a kicker set up on it. I got this transmission for a good deal because it had a problem, and I was able to figure it out. So check my video out. Not only do I find the problem, but I do a full rebuild on this transmission. So if you have one of these Revtech transmissions, this should be a very helpful video to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm. Whatever an algorithm is, it helps it. Anyhow, ultimately, what caused the leak in this transmission is this. You can see that there's 2 bearings in main drive gear here. There's one there that the shaft rides on, and then there's one down in the other end, and that one's right there. And then you have this seal. The common problem on these is this bearing here walks in this way. So it sits out here and all of a sudden it walks itself in. And when that happens, this seal has nothing to rest on, and then it allows the seal to move around and it'll leak right out here out the shaft. You'll think you'll have a bad seal, but it's this bearing walked in and the seal has no support. So I pressed the old bearings out and pressed 2 new bearings in. To press these in, there's a special tool, and I'll insert that video of what the special tool looks like now. This is the Jim's tool to install the bearings. It's 37842-91. You can see this side's longer than this side. This side goes on the inner and puts the bearing in flush or a little below flush, and then this side's real deep, and that's so that the seal can go in and have room. So the way that tool works is one side of it only countersinks this side a little bit. The other side of that tool countersinks the bearing further in. And that gives you the ability to put the seal in and have the seal be all the way in to where it's supposed to be, as you can see here. The thing I do to stop these bearings from walking is I get a little of this green Loctite after it's pressed together, and that's what this is for, press fit assist. Then I put a little bit of it on a screwdriver like this, and you can put this on when you're pressing them in, or it works after the fact. Now I just get a dab of it on there like that. I go right down in here to the bearing. I set it on there and I just kind of move it around in order not to get it in the bearing, but get it in between the bearing and main drive gear. You don't need a lot of this. This will creep its way down in there, and that bearing will not move until it has to be pressed out. I do the same thing over here on this side to get the outer bearing. Then the other spot I do is right here. I'm not talking about much. You can see, you can barely see where I put it on. Now those bearings can't move once that dries. Last thing I do is put a little bit on right where the seal is to stop it from wanting to move. Like I said, this creeps its way down in there. Just like that. And now you just let that dry, and you have no worries about the bearings moving in the future. And that's what caused this transmission to leak. Now the other thing I do is I clean everything real good, which this has already been cleaned, and then I inspect everything real good. None of the gears on main drive gear have any pitting on either side of any kind. The inner bearing surface here looks real good. And the most important part on your gears is right here, where the clutches come into the gear to shift gears. These should have sharp corners on them, and they do. So this main drive gear is in excellent condition. The next thing I'm going to do is assemble the gears onto the counter shaft. The thing you want to do here is check everything. You want to clean it real good, and then in between cleaning it and assembling it, things can get rust on them. So I just coat everything in WD-40 real good. You have a bearing surface here, you have one here, and then one over here. And you just want to make sure they're not scored. You can see this shaft's in excellent condition, no pitting whatsoever. Same with all the gears, no pitting, none of the hardness is coming off on any of the gears at all. This transmission must have had very low miles. You can see right here that the dogs are machined, so they're, I guess, tapered. And all of them are real nice and sharp. No problem with that gear. There's also a bearing surface in here that's in perfect condition. You can see this transmission must have barely any miles. Same here, pitting's good. These are the dogs that engage like that, and that's how it shifts gears. You can see these dogs here, the edges on both sides are really sharp. No scoring, no pitting or any kind of hardness coming off any of these gears. Everything's in excellent shape. These both get one of these bearings. These bearings are, they were cleaned and then WD-40 just for assembly. The spacers, same thing. And then the snap rings, everything's been cleaned. All the gears are in just amazing condition, look brand new. Same with these gears. You can see here the dogs are in perfect condition, no wear. So now that I've inspected everything, I'm going to start putting everything back together. The way to put this back together is in the order that you see the gears laid out and the shaft. The way you build this is you have to do it with the trap door, and you put the shafts in the trap door because the gears mesh together with the gears on the other shaft, and you want to make sure that you get it right. If not, you can't get it back together without having both shafts there. It's not like you can build both shafts and then stick them together into the trap door. So you can see here, I got a snap ring, this gear, and I have this gear, and it has this bearing. Now it shows this bearing over here with the shaft, and that bearing rides on here. Then you have a spacer, snap ring, the clutch with dogs on both sides, and for the rest of it you have another snap ring, another spacer, this gear, it gets this bearing here, and then you have this gear. Now the way I have them, you take each gear and you'll flip it up and put it on the shaft as you go. And then lastly, you see this, you have this coned centering washer that centers the bearing onto the shaft. You have the washer over here on the other side of the trap door and the lock nut. And you can see this lock nut's been used, so I'm going to put red Loctite on this also, which I would do even if this were brand new. Like I said, everything's been cleaned and has WD-40 on it. This is the main shaft. This is the counter shaft. So for the main shaft, you have this gear with the clutches. Again, all the edges are real nice. No pitting, no wear. Same thing over on this side. The dogs are all good. This one gets a shift fork, as you can see, just like this one gets a shift fork, and this one gets a shift fork. You got a snap ring, spacer. I did mic all these spacers, and they all mic'd at 70,000, so you can interchange them and not have an issue. Next thing, you're going to have a bearing, and this bearing's going to go here on this shaft. You also have another bearing over here that goes here on this shaft. Again, I check all the gears for any wear or anything like that. Check the dogs. They're razor sharp. That's good. You have a spacer, another snap ring. You can see these were machined, each one of them down like that, and the edges are in good condition. Gear again, no wear, no pitting. You have another snap ring, another spacer, and then this gear again. Dogs are in excellent condition. Gears in excellent condition. Can't go wrong with that. You have one of these centering washers for the bearing, and then a washer and a nut for the outside of the shaft. With this shaft, I checked this real good with a micrometer and vernier calipers. It has what looks like some wear marks, but I'm not even sure you can see that on camera. But again, I checked it the whole way. There was no noticeable wear anywhere on any of this. The only thing I see at all is the keyway's a little bit damaged. I guess somebody didn't get it in right or something. Not really sure how you would do something like that. But I put a key in there and it holds a key perfectly. In fact, I had to get pliers to get the key out after I put it in, so it holds it really good. The threads are in perfect condition on all the shafts. No issue with any of the threads. The kicker gear rides out here. The splines are perfect. Everything cleaned up nice. So now I'm going to start assembling it. Here's the trap door. I replaced both these bearings. I did it off camera. Pretty straightforward. You remove the snap rings. You press them out from this side, and then to get the new ones in, I heat this up with a little propane torch. I freeze the bearing and then just push it in. Didn't really require much pushing. I made sure to have a tool that was the same size as the bearing, just a little smaller. It did require a little bit of a tap in, no big deal, and then just put the snap rings back in. Same over here. So these bearings are new. You can see they spin nice and free, no noise. They just have some oil on them that they came with. You can see I cleaned the gasket surfaces real good. There's no scratches or digs in any of the aluminum on either side. You can see there's no scars over here from any gears or anything like that. There's a little wear mark here, but nothing that I can even feel. Not sure exactly what even caused that, but the kicker gears would be over this side. Trapdoor's in perfect condition. So the first thing you have to do for the counter shaft to build it is you have to put this bearing on here. Now these bearings, they come apart like that, and you just bring them up here, kind of slip them up over the shaft. They come on and then they snap together right there, and then the bearing's on. You have to put 2 gears on before you put this into the trapdoor, or it won't go in. The way this gear goes on is right here. You have a snap ring here, spacer washer, the bearing with the gear, and then this gear. And if you look at the picture, the dogs have to face in like this. And then on this gear, it just goes on like that. Then you have this centering washer, and it goes on like that. Then this goes into the trapdoor, and the counter shaft is here. And to get that in, you have to give it a little tap. Now I'm just going to tap it with a rubber mallet. And there it is. Now it gets this spacer, and that can go on from either direction, like that. Now it gets this snap ring. I will say that these are tricky to get on and off. Alright, for you guys that do this all the time, I realize that I can't get this one on here because this collar hits this gear. So I have to take this gear off and then put this one on. This is the first time I've done a 5-speed in about, I don't know, long time, since 2005. So I'll take this off and show you what that looks like. Okay, got the snap ring off. Now I'm just going to pull the gear and the washer up, the spacer. Now I'm able to put this gear on, like that. And this gear goes back on. This gear can slide in and out. Now I'll put the snap ring back on. There's that on. Now over on the main shaft, gets a snap ring. That'll go onto this groove. Like that. It gets a spacer. It gets a bearing. Make sure it connects. And it gets a gear. Gets another spacer. And then another snap ring. But before I put that snap ring on, I'm going to make sure to put the next gear on over here. That gear goes on like this. Now I'm going to put the snap ring on over on this one. Okay, now that snap ring's on. Now on the counter shaft, it gets another snap ring. Now it gets a spacer and a bearing. Like that. Now that they're on and the bearing's on, I have to put the gear over here on the main shaft. And this slides between this gear and main drive gear. And where the shift fork goes in here, that faces the trapdoor like this. I can put this gear over here. Let's put it on the right way with the dogs down. Next thing it gets is this gear here, and when I put this gear in, This lettering was out when I took it off. And now it gets a snap ring. There, that snap ring's in. Now this side goes into main drive gear, so it doesn't get anything over here. So if none of the dogs are engaged, you have neutral. You engage this dog, you have that gear. Back to neutral, engage that one. Back to neutral, engage that one. Back to neutral, engage this one. And then this also engages in the main drive gear or fifth gear. That's how that works. So what I'm going to do off camera is both these nuts, I'm going to put red Loctite on them and torque them to spec, and I'll get the spec out of the manual. You can see right here in the manual, main shaft and counter shaft nuts, 45 to 55 foot-pounds, 61 to 75 Newton meters. So off camera, I torqued both nuts to 50 foot-pounds. This nut here is 1 3/8. This nut here is 1 1/16, and both of them got the red Loctite. All right, I'm down here at John's Cycles again, and John's gracious enough to lend me some tools. This is the tool to put main drive gear in this. It's Jim's part number 35316-80-7. Put the gear up in the transmission here. You slide this through like this, and then you take this tool, which is Jim's part number 35316-80-1, and it goes on the race of the bearing like that, and then you just put these nuts on the end of the shaft and pull it in. I'll show you what that looks like when I have it all set up. Here it is all set up. You see I have the plate on main drive gear, and when it is that you put this on here, it hits the inner race of the bearing but goes over top of the threads and the splines on that gear. Now I'm just going to tighten that nut. You have this bearing here, and it's got a bearing internal so that none of this spins as you're tightening. Right, now it's all installed and I have to put the seal in here, but the one thing I want to show is that this slides over all of this, and then you pull off of the inner race of the bearing, and that way you don't put any pressure on the trans case. That's the whole point of this tool. And this is that bearing I was saying where one side spins and the other side's stationary, so none of it rotates. Here's the seal for this. John had to match it up for me from the old one because it's kind of an oddball. It's a Jim's part number JGI 12044A. All right, you can see before I install seals like this, I put a very thin layer of the black RTV on them. Of course, I learned this from John here at John's Cycles. Now that I'm back in the garage shop, I'm going to start putting this back together. So what has to happen now is I need to put the transmission into the case. But first, a gasket on here. You can see that's a nice new James gasket. Although all the bearings are oiled, I'm going to make sure put some assembly lube on the bearings. Want to make sure all the bearings have plenty of assembly lube on them since they're all new. Want to make sure that this seal gets plenty of lube on it so the shaft slips right through it and doesn't damage it. Now I'm just going to run a little on it like this. Let it go down in there. To assemble this, the easiest way I've found to do this is just by slipping the transmission right over top the entire gear set. Just like that. And there you you have it. Right down on it. Smooth as can be. Next, to hold this piece on, you have to put these 4 smaller diameter bolts up top and the 4 larger ones down the bottom. These all get torqued 15 to 20 foot-pounds, and this is the only bit that I have that gets in here like this. Now I'm going to go around and do the rest of them off camera, but you can see it's a little deep, and I don't have anything in between real short and deep. So this is going to have to do. I got them all tight, but on this one, the only way to get on that was with a curved Allen wrench, and same with this one. I couldn't get the torque wrench straight in on them. Now that I have that together, I'm going to put a little assembly lube on these bearings in the trap door. Spin that around, make sure everything gets coated nicely. This gasket sticks up right here, so I'm just going to take a razor and trim it flush so it looks good. Alright, like that. Next thing I'm going to do is install the shift forks. They go in like this. This one goes here, like that. This one goes there, like that. And then this one has the cutaway, which fits around this. Goes over here, plus it's the thinnest in here to fit in. Now I'm going to put the shaft through. Now the shaft's in, you can kind of see all these straight edges line up and all the dowels point in the same direction. And this is how it shifts, so you get it in neutral like that. So I hold main drive gear or 5th gear and you shift like that. You can no longer hold main drive gear. A lot of times to get these to shift, you have to actually hold main drive gear still. If not, everything will just rotate together. Now you can see you can't hold the gear. I go back to neutral here. I can hold the gear, but even though I'm in neutral, everything will spin. Now I'll go in here. To do this again, you have to hold, there it goes, shifts nice and easy. You can imagine when you're shifting those gears, they're spinning at different speeds at that point, because the engine's spinning at one speed and the engine input's here, and then the sprocket's here spinning at a different speed. And that's what helps it shift. Now we'll go over to here. That one shifts in. And there you go. That's how the whole thing shifts. Now there's a plug that goes in here that holds this shaft in, and I'll put that in, then I'll put the shift drum on. Next, I'm going to be putting in the shift drum. Before you install this, you want to make sure that you have the 4 dowels that's centered into the proper position. And then it basically goes on like this. But to get it to go on, you have to lift up on the arm here. Then you kind of get it in here and line it up. Then after you get it up here, you have to kind of make sure these are all in their proper spot where they're all lined up with one of the channels, like that. Then you kind of just wiggle it in a little bit. And you just give it a little tap down. Just use my hand for that. Once it's down, you want to put the 4 bolts in. And I use a little blue Loctite on these. You take it down even, that way it doesn't get cocked and bend something or get something out of alignment. For this one here, you can just lift the pole up, get the arm out of the way so you can get on it. Although it's down, they're not torqued. You just want to make sure it shifts through the gears. And probably have to spin almost a 3-handed job here. Now that they're all snug down, you just want to torque them. Right here you see it says support block bolts 7 to 9 foot-pounds. Also, it says top cover mounting bolts 7 to 9, and then right here, all 1/4 inch fasteners 7 to 9 foot-pounds. So I'm going to torque them at 8. I'm going to go crosswise. Alright, now they're all torqued down. Next thing I'm going to put in is this plug that holds the fork rod in. So I don't have to worry about any leaks. I use a Teflon sealant and I use the paste. Before you put it in, you give it a little push so that it's all the way down. Now just line it up and turn it in. This will seal it so that no oil comes dripping out. Okay, that's in tight. Now you just want to get a rag and wipe off the excess. So now everything's torqued down. You just want to make sure that it shifts properly. Bring it down into first. You come half a turn. That's neutral. You can see right here, it's neutral because I can turn the shaft and nothing happens. That's second. That's third. That's fourth. And that's fifth. Fourth. Third. Second. First. And then neutral. Shifts through all the gears great. Now I'll put the top cover on. Now the one thing I did do is put an RGS in it for Rap's Garage Shop. Next thing the Harley manual has you do is check when you line up 2 of these dowels is that the spacing between this fork and those dowels on the drum are equal distance. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but you can see they're equal distance. And if they're not, what you do is you loosen this jam nut and then you rotate this back and forth. It'll allow it to move this shifter arm back and forth to get that alignment. This one did not need that adjustment. Next thing I'm going to do is put the top cover on. Since these 5 bolts are all 1/4 inch, I'm going to torque them 7 to 9 foot-pounds. I usually torque them to 8. You can see I got a little RGS there for Rap's Garage Shop. Put the gasket on. As you can see, I put blue Loctite on all the Allen bolts. I like to do this with it in neutral so that when the neutral safety switch lines up with this, you can tell it pushes against the spring like that. You can see it moving back on its own. That's how you know it's lined up properly and that it's going to work. Like to start them all a little bit. Now I'm going to torque them. And I just like to go around them a second time, make sure they're all still the same. Because I'm anal, I'm checking to make sure the neutral safety switch works. Right now it's in gear. And there it's in neutral. So your neutral light would be on. Earlier in this video I said I didn't know what might have caused these marks. And now I remember, it's the spring. When the spring's on here, it rubs up against there and causes those marks, so it's no big deal. You can see this part of the spring sits on this lip that's right here. Now I'm going to put the kicker gears on. You can see this kicker gear is in excellent condition. The spring goes on this way, and the kicker gear goes here like this, and it allows it to move in and out and ratchet. The next thing it goes on is the other side of the ratcheting part of the kicker gear. You can see that's in really good shape. You also want to make sure that this little ball is still spring loaded. That ball grabs your clutch and allows your clutch to stay with the gear, and then it also gets a key in here. Now you can see I have the keyway up top. There's the key in it, and I get the kicker gear and I line it up with the key. You do have to put this lock on, but I use the red Loctite. I probably don't even need this lock because of that, but I will put it on. There's the red Loctite on the nut. Now I'll torque that off camera. Now that that's torqued on, this is how it works. It spins this way, but this way it grabs. So when you're kicking it, turns it this way, spins the shaft on the other side, which spins the motor. And then when you let up, freewheels. When you let off the kicker on the inside, that inside kicker gear that sits here, there's a ramp, and that ramp pushes this gear all the way back while the bike's running, so you don't hear this thing ratcheting when it's running. You push the kicker down, it allows it to come out, It does the ratcheting when it comes back up, and then when it's all the way up, it allows it to freewheel. Now you bend the locking tab over. Alright, now that I have it bent over, I'm going to put the studs in for the kicker cover, and I'll have red Loctite on those studs. I double net the fine thread side and put the coarse side into the case. A little bit of red Loctite. Then that's it. I just give it a little snug, not much, like that. You don't want to hurt the aluminum, and you can if you just keep putting it in. Now I'll do the rest of them off camera, because once you've done one, you've done 100. Now you can see I got those all in, and it's time to put the kicker cover on. Now to get the kicker cover set up. You can see here I ended up having to pull all the studs out because this kicker cover takes Allen head cap screws, and they sit recessed down in there like that. So I pulled them all out. I'm going to put the shaft through, in. Now that I have the spring on, now I'm just going to put the kicker arm on. I was going to put the bolt in to keep it in while I'm working on it. I'm starting to get the kicker cover set up. I was going to use this chrome cover. When I went to set the chrome one up, I had to pull the parts out of the factory cover. Now you can see this is real thick here, and this clutch shaft just barely sticks through this thicker aluminum piece. So I took it off to move it over to here, and when I put it on, you can see this is thinner, and the shaft goes down and touches the case, and that's no good because you don't want this shaft moving up and down. So I can't use this chrome cover. Now I'm going to put everything back onto this cover, and I'll have to Loctite the studs all back in. Oh well. Now I'm going to put the clutch throwout bearing shaft in. When you're putting this in, I want to make sure the throwout fork faces this way because the bearing sits here, and it gets this washer underneath of it. So I'm going to put it in. I'm going to start that shaft down, lift it up, just slip that in there, and that was pretty simple. And now I'm going to put the E-clip back on it. So that's all good. Now I'm going to put the kicker shaft in. The orientation for this is when the arm is at 12 o'clock and the clutch arm's at 12 o'clock, I want this stop pin at 7 o'clock, like that. And then it comes around, it contacts here like I showed earlier. Now I'll put the lock on. I'm going to put a little blue Loctite on it, even though it has the metal lock. And I'm going to tighten that up. Now that I have it tight, I'm going to bend the locking tab over, like that. I'm going to connect this spring onto this piece, but before I do that, I'm going to get everything set up in here, because it's really hard doing it otherwise. I'm going to put all the studs back in. Now that I have all the studs back in, I'll put the gasket on. Alright, gasket's on. Had this in my stash, the throwout bearing. I also had this gear in my stash, brand new. I don't know when I bought that stuff, but I don't even remember. Along with these gears are new. The way you get this on there is you want this dimple to go over this bearing, like that. You line the cutout up here for the throwout bearing fork. Put the shifter up at 12 o'clock. Just like that. Slipped on. Put a couple nuts on to hold it all together. So you can see when it's up, it's not ratcheting. When I kick it down, you can hear that it's ratcheting. And then as soon as I come up, it disengages that, and that shows that it all works. So I'm going to leave all these nuts loose. I'll snug them just lightly. The reason for that being is that when you put the rod in, you may have to take this cover off to line that clutch up. Last thing I'm going to do is wind the spring around and connect it on. You can just do that with your hand. Last few finishing touches on this. I'm going to put this chrome cover on here. Covers up the spring. Kicker arm goes on. Not going to tighten this now. You can see here, got the left-handed sprocket nut already on it. I'm going to put the key in the keyway. Then I'm going to put the clutch hub nut on. And this is also left-handed. If you made it this far into my video, you either have a lot of problems with your transmission or you're a die-hard fan. I'm just going to use a little tape and tape the key in. I'm going to put the tape on backwards with the sticky side up so it doesn't leave residue all over it. And then I'll flip it over and cover up the sticky stuff. And then just give it a little twist with the end to pull it off. If you watched to the end, I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I appreciate everybody's support and all the subscribers I have. Please don't forget, hit that like button and subscribe. Again, thanks for watching.